everybody, Gary here with Pow Music. In this video, we're gonna go over this awesome 12-bar intro solo to Red House by Jimi Hendrix, live in Sweden. So you had that fretLIVE animation. In this lesson, we're gonna break down each phrase one step at a time, talk about some of the techniques he's using, some of the key notes that he's nailing on each particular chord. Then we're gonna go over how to take these ideas and make them your own. So I'm gonna demonstrate playing one of these phrases note for note, and then kind of playing it with your own flavor and rearranging it to make it your own. So my goal here is for you to not only learn how to play the riff, but to understand the context, how it exists on the fretboard, over the chord progression, the intervals, and then ultimately incorporate it into your own vocabulary and make it your own. If you want to go deeper on soloing, if you're a beginner, check out my Soloing for Complete Beginners course. If you're more on the intermediate level, check out my fretLIVE Fretboard Mastery program. For Pow Music patrons, we've got the tab for the entire solo, the backing track that I created in the key of A and in the key of B flat and in the key of B, in case you want to practice it in the 3 different keys that Hendrix mainly played it in. All right, let's get into the lesson. So this is the thing, Jimi calls the key of B. He goes like that, he plays a B chord. And then Noel goes and plays an A. So I'm sure Jimi heard that, but he starts it in B, this B7 chord. And the intro, even though it's an intro, it's literally the chord progression. So it's not an intro to the chord progression. He's starting at the top of the chord progression, but the band doesn't kick in until the 5th measure. So Jimi's just on his own. So he starts in the key of B with this B7 and gives a little vibrato. Now this is often called the D shape, right? Because if we think of a D7, we're just moving that up to here. And we're leaving out the root note. So we're just playing the 5th, the flat 7, and the major 3rd. So we just arpeggiate it top to bottom. Bring it down a half step. Then the last time he goes, so he skips the middle note, then back to where we started. So when he brings it down to B flat 7, that's actually a substitute for E7. They sound very similar. Let me explain. So the chord right there is an E7, but he's playing a B flat 7. So that's called a tritone substitution. Jimi did a lot of pretty advanced things. It's a great sound. The reason why it works is it shares the same tritone, just flipped as the 4 chord. So a dominant 7 chord, if we look at an E7, between this note and this note is what we call a tritone. A tritone just means 3 whole tones. So from here to here, that's 1 whole tone, 2 whole tones, 3 whole tones. And then when we play those together, that's a diminished 5th. So a dominant 7 chord contains both a major triad and a diminished triad put together. That's that sound. There's tension, but it's also got that major sound at the same time. Okay, so now if we take this tritone and we reverse it, we have this. Right, so I took this note and played it here, retained this note, and now the tritone of this dominant 7 chord is the same tritone as in this dominant 7 chord. See that? Same kind of a sound, right? Just a different flavor. So the rule of thumb is if you want to substitute one dominant 7 chord with another, just go up a tritone. So from E, up 3 tones, 1, 2, 3, is B flat. So we're playing it here. Cool, right? So Now, at that moment, Noel Redding plays an A again. So Noel's just playing this thing a whole step down than the usual key of B. So Jimi hears that, and you see him go like this. Backs down a whole step, and then starts the song in A. Good ears on Jimi's part. So then instead of starting here, which would be the right spot, he brings it down a whole step to the key of A. So right off the bat, there's a signature Hendrix trick right here. Check this out. Okay, so that Hendrixism is after he goes this right here, ready? So he bends up this flat 7 to the root, right? And then catches the next string, the flat 5 note, and drops that down. So up with the flat 7, catch the flat 5, and drop it down like that. So then just running down the blues scale with some key micro bends. Stopping on the flat 3. Now that brings us to the 4 chord, which is the 5th chord in the 12-bar progression, and that's when the band kicks in, right? Starts with a classic blues riff. So this is Blues 101 riff right here. You have to know this riff. It's a bend up on the 4th to the 5th, drop down, pull off. So you get 3 notes for the price of 1 pick. And then what I really like is that he uses his index finger to slide back into that 4th, which is the root of the 4 chord. Right? So nailing that chord tone. Right? Right on that 4 chord. So cool. So he goes, slides up a whole step, bends a whole step, then slides down a whole step. All this whole step stuff. Finishes that phrase by going up to the 4th scale degree, the root of that 4 chord, and then scale degree 1, which is the 5th of the 4 chord. So really outlining that chord. So really outlining the chord. So the blues it's only limited usually to 3 chords. So the work that it takes to really get to know which notes are part of what chord, it's very limited. It's not like we're dealing with an infinite number of chord progressions. It's basically 1 chord progression. So you can really get to know the sound of the progression, which is basically always the same, and which notes go along with which chord. You want to trust your ear, but obviously someone like Hendrix has been playing the blues so long, he knows that's my root, right? Really outlining that chord. Then he does it again, but he holds out that a little longer. Flavor, right? So then we've got this bend, right? Classic bending the 4 to the 5, such a big blues move. But then to the root, or somewhere in between. Somewhere in between there and there. So really outlining the 4 again, because we're on the 4 chord. Now that note that he hammers on, that note is the major third of the 4 chord, right? Intentional. And then he does the same thing on the next string. And then that little bluesy trail off. He does that a lot. Sometimes you hear him go, but just those 2, little pull off. Now I just want to take a moment to talk about Jimi's picking. So he picks like a few of my other favorite players, Isaiah Sharkey, George Benson, Corey Wong, with the pick angled this way. So the pick is on an angle that way. Most people angle the pick this way, like you're starting a lawnmower, but they angle it that way, like you're, I don't know, find your own metaphor. But anyway, so that pick, that way of holding the pick, I think really ends up creating a unique tone. Like listen to Sharkey, listen to Benson, listen to Corey, listen to Hendrix. You're going to hear a bit of a similarity, especially in their clean tone, based on their pick attack. All right, so now we see Jimi play with his controls. And I believe he switches either to the middle pickup, looks like the middle pickup, but it's possible that he turned the volume down on his neck so you're hearing more of the bridge. To me, it sounds like more of the bridge. So I'm going to go bridge pickup. And then I think he increases volume, probably had it toggled a little bit. He might have stepped on some sort of a dirt pedal. Doesn't sound like fuzz, but we hear a little bit of overdrive. The volume might have been overdriving his Marshall amp. So I'm kicking on the overdrive for this section to get more of that bright, focused, aggressive sound as opposed to this. So here was my original tone, was, but now I'm going like this. So I just put a little bit of the overdrive on my Wampler Dual Fusion and went to the bridge pickup, got the tone around 6, volume on 10. So here we've got. Now to control the muting, you don't want open strings ringing out. If you keep this index finger barred, it's going to mute out that G string when you let go of it. See, because the G string is going to go like this. It's going to land on the tip of your index finger. Hendrix often just kept that index finger planted and did all his finger work. My hands aren't quite as flexible or large, so I can't really do that. But I could do it to an extent in certain situations. If you spend all that time wishing your hands were like Hendrix, you're going to get depressed, believe me. So just try to do the best you can and work with your own advantages and limitations. So then we go down the pentatonic. Now you could pull this off, but there's a certain sound to picking both notes that we hear from him. So this trail off, you barely hear this note. So we come back after the. So we go. We kill it at the top. And then trail off. So real soft fingered on the trail off. Like if you look at him, he's barely touching the guitar. I mean, now that I'm watching this in slow motion, I think the last few notes he didn't even pick. He just hammered on, you know, just used his left hand. Well, for him, his right hand. Adding that extra pinky makes it harder for me. Like, just ending on this note would be fine. All right, now we're gonna make our way to the 5 chord. This is maybe my favorite part. So he goes. So it's a popular thing in the blues to play a note in one place and then slide up to it on the next string. You know, like that. But if we overshoot it, big deal. Sounds cool. Then he goes. So this riff right here, targeting the root of the 5 chord, E7. So here's our note E, right? So then when we get up to that E, give it a little vibrato, just that using your wrist, grabbing it, using the neck as a fulcrum. Right? So it's all in the wrist twist to get that. Now, if you're wondering about Jimi's string gauge, he is, according to his guitar tech, he used a custom set. He had a 10 on the high E string, but I think down to a 38 on the low E. So where typically you have like a 9 to 42, he had a 10 to 38, I believe. So they were a little thicker on the high end and thinner on the low end to get more of a balanced output, from what I understand. Okay, now he does that lick again where I find it way easier here than anywhere else, because what you could also do when you, so we bend up this 10th fret of the high E, and we grab 10th fret of the B and drop it down. Now I find you could use your middle finger to mute the high E string, just to make sure you're only going to hear one string on the way down. See, I put my... I did have a big cup of coffee before this lesson. I think it's running through my nervous system a little bit. All right, so then after that, he goes straight down the blues scale with a couple key micro bends and a trail off. Always adding in these little micro bends, right? So those little micro bends make it sound so funky and expressive. Then a classic, just kind of going up the B string and then down the G string. So that right there slides into that 5th. Well, slides into the 4th, bends it to the 5th. Now that is Blues 101. We saw that in the Clapton riff that I did a couple weeks ago, probably also in that John Mayer one from a few weeks ago. So, and then he does that riff one more time. The bend this note, grab this one, and bring it down. So. Then there, on the 4 chord, he's landing on the major 3rd. So definitely check out my lesson that's all about nailing the major 3rds on 1, 4, and 5. I'll put a link to that in the description. After that lesson, you'll be able to do this very easily all the time, I promise. So. Then he does this little rake. And hits the second scale degree. And then we go another classic blues riff. Now being he's got his finger barred, you can see he just kind of alternate pick strums, like if you review his right hand, he kind of strums through both these strings. Then we get to the one chord and he goes. And that's an arpeggio on the triad of the A major triad. And again sliding into that fourth because we go 1, 4. So he goes 1, 4. Then we're going to work our way back to the one chord. Again on the 4, hitting that major third. So. Right up the pentatonic, then that hammer on pull off to the third of the 4 chord. Working our way back to da-dee-ya-doo-da. Then we've got so mixing together riffs we've heard previously and developing, kind of repeating the last riff, parts of it. And then but now ending it like this on the root of the 5 chord. So like I said at the beginning of the video, to me there's a 3-step process to becoming a better improviser. 1 is learn ideas that you love from the players that you love, as close to note for note with all of the expressive detail as possible. By ear is the best way. Second step is to contextualize. That's what my channel really tries to help you with, is making sense of how it all exists on the fretboard and some of the underlying theory and how everything's connected. And then the third thing is to workshop those ideas and make them your own. So first thing I'm doing here is just playing Jimi's solo note for note as best as I can. And then the second time through, I'm gonna start changing the ideas, adding some of my own things, changing some of the rhythms. Some things I'm gonna play almost note for note, other things I'm gonna totally transform. What you're not gonna see is the pretty much 3 hours of jamming I did just on this solo, trying to workshop those ideas. So I encourage you to do the same. After my solo is 12 bars for you to solo on your own. If you want the complete jam tracks in 3 keys, that's for Pound Music patrons, but there's 12 bars for you in A to do the same thing on your own. Enjoy. Alright, so now I'm just going to give it a little bit of my own flavor, but still stay pretty close to the original. Before I go, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to the following upper-level POW Music patrons: William Creighton, Andrew Vogel, Chris Watson, David Crawford, Derek Mickle, Don Stringham, Donald James Grass, Jake Martin, John Cushman, Joseph McCarthy, Kent Grissom, Lemuel Foston, Michael Varney, Randy Wallingford, Sam Juans, Scott Lee, Sean Ellis, Stephen Pisano, Trampus Thompson. Thank you guys so much, and thank you to all of the POW Music patrons that help make this content possible. Happy playing. I'll see you guys next time.